There we are. All right. All right, so you got your notes.
Got my notes, ready to go.
I got all my sites up. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
Let me do one last refresh.
Thanks for hanging in there with me today.
Oh, no problem.
God, what a day.
Yeah, nothing new. Nothing new. All right. Have you been getting the emails from CBS?
Yeah, I got a second one. I got a first one like 2 days ago.
Yep.
And then I got a second one today.
Yep. Okay.
I thought that was coming from you.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You only have, and I keep sending them because you only have a limited amount of time to respond to it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like 24 or 48 hours, something like that.
Okay, so I need to respond.
Yeah, you need to follow the directions in that email.
Okay.
To get connected.
Okay. And that's Sunday, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, when this podcast is over, I'll take a look at it and get it into you. I had a dentist appointment yesterday, a doctor's appointment the day before, people calling out sick, all this. I hadn't had time to even see my wife, so it's been a very, been a crazy week.
Well, we'll roll through this tonight as fast as we can.
Okay.
Because I haven't had dinner either, so. All right, let's get going then. All right, just making sure everything's working. All right, everything appears to be working. Let me just double check on here. Yep, it's showing us live. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, and welcome to the next episode of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here with Steve. How's it going today, Steve?
Going good. It's been a hectic day, but I'm sitting down here relaxing with an Arizona green tea, so it can't be that bad. Going pretty good, Wayne. Look forward to talk to you about hockey tonight.
Yeah, we both have had some trying times at work in the recent couple of weeks, and that sometimes does interfere with the recording of the podcast, and we're actually recording a little bit late this week. We normally record on Wednesdays. It is now Thursday, and we're recording tonight. Just ended up being a better day for both of us this week with our work schedules, so that is what we decided to do. So with that in mind, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. We've got, of course, the preseason games that have begun and are actually beginning to wind down. We got opening night is less than a week away now. 6 days, I think, is by my count.
Yeah, I can feel the butterflies start churning. They always do this time of year. I get the churning of the butterflies. Oh, that's right. NHL starts.
Yep.
Boy, am I excited. Yeah.
Yeah, the games going on right now don't really mean a whole lot. It's pretty much just pure entertainment value at this point. I'm not holding any kind of stock on the actual results of the game, but it is fun to watch the games anyway. Yeah. And then, of course, the teams are in full roster cut mode. Most teams have gotten down below 30 players at this point and just have a final few cuts left to go to get down to the 23 or less mark that they need to be at opening night. And, of course, tonight we're going to finish up our season previews of all 31 teams. We've yet to talk about the Atlantic Division teams, so we are going to tackle that tonight, and that will finish up our team-by-team previews for this year. And if your team's not in the Atlantic Division, just go back to our 3 previous episodes. If you could see it right in the title of the shows, which division we talk about that particular day. But the Central, the Pacific, and the Metro divisions, we all talked about the last 3 weeks. So tonight it's going to be the Atlantic Division. And then, of course, I'm only going to mention it this one time because we're just about getting ready to go. I'm putting out our last call for our fantasy hockey league. I've actually had one guy drop out at the last second. He decided that actually the story is that I got from him was he runs a league of his own, and his draft is occurring at the exact same time as our draft. And he just decided that it was going to be too difficult to try to juggle the two. So he decided to bow out. So we do have one last opening, and we are taking applications for that. And I was also trying to convince another cousin of mine to take that last spot, and he hasn't decided whether or not he's going to. And the main reason is he runs a league of his own, and his leagues are very similar to mine because he used to be in our league, and he designed his very close to ours. And he still has like 4 or 5 openings in his league. So if you can't get into our league, I do have a league that if you still want to play fantasy hockey, it's run by a cousin of mine, and he does a very good job at running a league himself. He's got a few openings as well. So if you just get in touch with us at feedback@thehockeynuts.com, I can point you in the right direction if you still want to play fantasy hockey and you haven't yet. And, of course, just a reminder to all those who are playing in our league, the draft is this Sunday, October 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern. So you want to be clearing your calendar for getting ready to do that. And I know you're pretty excited for that. You'll be kind of our impartial observer of the league this year. So
I'm looking forward to that. Just take a look at things, and I'm anxious to see what people say and how that's going to go. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun time. It's a good way. It's another way to watch the games and enjoy it in kind of a different point of view. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, before we get going on the stories this week, let's remind everybody, of course, you can email the show at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. If you want to give us any feedback, you can reach us through Twitter at I'm at Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at SBall504man. You can reach us through our Facebook page at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. You can reach us through our YouTube channel at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. And those are the various ways that you can get in touch with us. And, of course, speaking of YouTube, we do live stream the recording of our podcast each week. It's just the raw recording. It's not the finished touch with the highlights that we insert and the music and all that. We just simply do the base recording of the podcast, and we stream that live. And, of course, it's also available for you to watch after the fact. If you don't get to watch it live, you can simply go to our YouTube channel and watch it after the fact. So if you don't want to just simply listen to us and you actually want to look at our ugly mugs, you can go to the YouTube channel and see us there. And then, of course, the Facebook website, the facebook.com/thehockeynuts. We do put any kind of news or hockey news related stories that I see come across Facebook. I'll reshare it and put it up on the Hockey Nuts website. So it's a good place to go for an additional content. Eventually we'll develop that into something a little bit more, but for right now, that's pretty much all I got time for. All right, so let's head on to the stories of the week. And the first thing we need to start with is NHL transactions. And
yes.
What I have, I've been getting all of my transactions right from capfriendly.com. They pretty much have them listed in a nice order, dated, order by date, and you can see the teams easily and who they are. The last time we recorded, we left off with the transactions that took place through the 19th of September. So from the 20th through the 28th, that's what we're going to cover tonight. And I'm really going to wrap it up real quick by just saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players have signed with various teams, all entry-level contracts, all 3-year contracts, entry-level. Well, actually, one of them was only a 1-year contract, entry-level contract. So anyway, bottom line is most of these players, I suspect, are going to probably not make their teams coming out of training camp. And what will happen is they'll all get sent back to their junior teams, and those contracts will slide back a year. That's just my guess. But I'll just list the names real quick and the teams that they signed for. Dylan Colin Defenseman signed with the Vegas Golden Knights. Edward Wicho signed with the Florida Panthers. He's a defenseman. Kiefer Bellows, forward. I believe that's Brian Bellows' kid. Signed with the Islanders. Sam Miletic, forward, signed with the Penguins. Luke Green, defenseman, signed with the Jets. Jared Anderson-Dolan, center, signed with the Kings. Brendan Manel, defenseman, signed with the Wild. Jack Studnicka, center, signed with the Bruins. Dylan Ferguson, goaltender, signed with the Golden Knights. Robert Thomas, center, signed with the Blues. And Alexei Lipanov, center, signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Anything you want to add about any of those players?
I didn't notice anything, Wayne, on any of those players other than what you just said, that in all likelihood they are going to perhaps serve out their at least the beginning part of their contract with the representative farm team for the team that they play for. I did not notice that any of those players would make their respective teams. There may be one or two, but it didn't jump out at me.
Yeah, every one of those players, with the exception of Edward Wichow, the defenseman that signed with the Florida Panthers, every one of those players is in the age of 18 to 20 years old. So they would all be eligible to go back to their junior programs and play out, which means their contracts would slide back a year. So the year wouldn't start, or the first year of that contract wouldn't start until
next year.
Until next year or beyond, if they continue to go back to their junior team.
Right.
Until that first year that they play more than 10 games with their NHL club, essentially, is when that contract will burn its first year. In the case of Wichow, and he's the only one of that entire group that only signed a one-year deal. The rest of them signed 3-year deals. He is 24 years old, and he, in all likelihood, will end up with the Florida Panthers American Hockey League team. So, or even get sent down, all the way down to the ECHL. But he'll end up in one of those places because he is too old to play junior. So that's all I have for transactions that have happened over the past week. Now let's move on to the professional tryout situation, the PTO contracts. I've got the list in front of me. Again, I got it from capfriendly.com. You can get it right on there. And I will list the players here that are still with the team that they signed the PTO with. Of course, if you want to find out who signed with what teams, if you go to our show last week, we listed probably 40, 45 players that all signed PTOs with various teams. Well, this list that I'm going to give you this week are the ones that are still remaining with those teams. Everybody else has since been released. David Booth is still with the Red Wings. Alex Chason is still with the Capitals. Andrew Desjardins is still with the Rangers. Bobby Farnham is, I'm sorry.
No.
Bobby Farnham. Yeah, Bobby Farnham got let go. Yep.
He got let go today.
Yep. Cody Franson is still with the Chicago Blackhawks. Eric Jelena is still with the Canadiens. Tanner Glass is still with Calgary. Cody Gulubeff is still with Buffalo. Jimmy Hayes is still in New Jersey. Chris Kelly is still in Edmonton. Brooks Laich is still in L.A. Chris Lee is still in L.A. Ryan Malone is still in Minnesota. Jay McClement is still in Pittsburgh. P.A. Parento is still in Detroit. Joe Pendenza is still in Columbus. Brendan Peary is still in Florida. Roman Polak is still in Toronto. Teddy Purcell is still in Boston. Scotty Upshaw is still with the Canucks. Ryan White is also still with the Canucks. And Daniel Winnick is still in Minnesota. And finally, Harry Zolnarchuk is still in Florida. So all the others have been released. And in fact, a lot of the other names that were released are some of those guys I really haven't heard of. So
yeah,
but most of the guys that I just listed did play in the NHL last year.
You and I both watched the Boston Detroit game, Wayne, in the opening of Little Caesars Arena.
Yep.
And they spoke very highly of P.A. Parento. I think he's going to get a contract with that team.
Yep.
You remember them talking about him that night. They think he's going to play for them. So
Yep.
that's the only one I know that's looks like it's going to turn out for him.
Yeah, and I'm curious, on the Bruins side of things, what their intention is with Teddy Purcell. Obviously, he signed on with them, hoping to get a little bit more life left in his NHL career. Of course, he's a former UMaine Black Bear, so I've got a little bit of a personal affiliation
Oh,
there
okay.
with him. But I think they have him there pretty much as insurance in case they decide at the last minute that some of these rookies that they're really giving a long look to
Right.
don't pan out, or they decide that Purcell will give them a better chance to win than one of these rookies will. But we should probably know within the next week or so who or if any of these players are still left with their respective teams.
I would say this, Wayne. Correct me if I'm wrong. These player PTO contracts, they're a highly specialized circumstance that that a team enters with a player. The agreement being that if you do well, you get a contract with our team, and it to me seems to be something where they've seen something in this player before. They're interested in the possibility of entering into an arrangement with that player, and it's up to that player to meet the terms of whatever they agree to. It's more they're further down the road than they are with a player who comes into training camp. Would you say that?
Yeah. In this case, it's usually these PTOs are usually given to veteran players. Most of them are in their late 20s and well into their 30s. And it's just a case where they're essentially giving this player a shot at making the team. They don't want to. They don't want to commit to an all-out year contract. Generally, these players don't want to sign two-way deals, so they don't want to do that option. This is kind of in between.
Oh yeah,
like a two-way deal and a full-fledged one-way NHL contract. That way, there's no commitments on either side. There's a maximum number a player can actually play in the NHL in the regular season under a PTO, but there's a maximum number of games that they're allowed to play. I believe it's 25, but I'm not entirely 100% certain of that. But there is definitely a maximum amount of games that a player can play under a PTO, and then the teams and the player have to decide one way or the other what they're going to do. They're either going to release him or sign him to a full-fledged deal.
Okay.
Usually the NHL is not going to have a situation like that kind of linger over the season. If these PTO guys are going to be signed, you're going to see it sometime in the next week.
Right.
Definitely by the end of the first week of the regular season.
Right.
And probably what ends up happening is if they, for these junior players that are up playing with their team, there's that 9-game maximum that the junior players allowed to play before they get sent back to junior. This could be a situation where this player remains under the PTO until they decide whether or not to keep those junior players. If they keep the junior player, the PTO guy gets released. If they decide to send the junior player back to the juniors, then they got to fill that roster spot with somebody, and it's either bring a guy up from the AHL or sign this PTO guy. So
right. Very good.
Yeah. All right. So that is it for PTOs, and just a quick look at the free agent situation. The two restricted free agents that were available at the end of or when we recorded last week are still in fact available. Andreas Athanasiou and Josh Anderson are both still restricted free agents and still have not signed with their teams. And we talked for quite a bit about Athanasiou's situation where it's a salary cap deal for them.
Right.
And then
did you hear Ken Holland's comments at the Bruins Red Wings game? I guess apparently Athanasiou's made some threats that he's going to do this or he's going to do that, and I don't I don't know a better way to characterize it from the way they described it, but Ken Holland said basically, he's not going to do but so much, and Athanasiou is a grown man and is free to do what he wants, if I understood it correctly. So,
so they're not
they're not together on their negotiations for him, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's what I gathered. But watch him sign tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't be surprised if one or both of these players ends up playing overseas somewhere for a year until they can work their way back over here. So, as far as unrestricted free agents are concerned, this really hasn't been a whole lot of movement there as well. CapFriendly.com is listing 41 players as unrestricted free agents that are guys that are still technically looking for jobs but haven't signed anywhere yet. I'm not going to bother listing them. We did go through and list about 20, 25 players last week. So if you want to hear the list, either go to capfriendly.com or listen to last week's show. You'll hear them. But the one player I do want to talk about is Jaromir Jagr, because there's some rumors that have cropped up over the past day or so that there may be some mutual interest with him and St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the injuries that St. Louis has had, so far in this preseason, that there may be some room to sign Jaromir Jagr. And the biggest reason that this rumor has cropped up is the Bobby Fabry injury, which we'll be talking about here. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it now. St. Louis Blues forward Bobby Fabry is out for the season after re-injuring his surgically repaired left knee. So that pretty much opens up a roster spot for Mr. Jagr to come in and help St. Louis.
Right.
And I think this is the kind of thing that Jagr is waiting for. Obviously, he's came out and said he doesn't want to sign a pro tryout contract. He's certainly not going to sign a two-way contract and go play in the minor leagues. He's just sitting around waiting, and he's going to be patient until a team has a need, and he'll be able to, swoop in and save the day for that team. And right now, not that there's anything going on, but St. Louis would be a prime candidate for this to happen now that Bobby Fabry won't be playing at all this season.
Yeah, that's a big loss. Whoa.
Yep.
Wow.
So, do you have any other things that you saw in any of these free agents?
Not that I'm aware of, other than as I said. Well, P.A. Parento is an unrestricted free agent, but it appears that Detroit is happy with him and that he may actually sign a contract. I'm not sure if I guess he's got a PTO as well, but he's listed as an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah.
That's the only guy I really have heard anything on that it looks actually positive for him.
Yeah, the PTO guys are still technically free agents. They could walk out of, get released tomorrow and sign with another team. So
right.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next injury story I've got for this week. Ottawa Senators captain Erik Karlsson skated with his teammates on Saturday for the first time since having surgery to repair torn tendons in his left foot back on June 14th. Karlsson, a two-time Norris Trophy winner, was the NHL's best defenseman, wore a light blue non-contact jersey, and did not take part in all the drills during the morning skate at Canadian Tire Center before a preseason game against the Canadiens. It's a positive thing, but we don't want to get too excited. It's a second step, Senators coach Guy Boucher said. First step was to let the therapist tell us when it was adequate to put him on the ice, because you need to get the flexibility and the strength off the ice before we could put him on the ice. Yesterday, they apparently put the skates on to see how it felt and went very lightly on the ice, and they felt he was able this morning to get dressed and be with the boys. Basically, this is the second step, but there's quite a few steps before we get to him playing. We don't want him to get too excited, Boucher said. The plan for Karlsson is to take the next 2 days off and see how his ankle responds. There's no timetable for his return. And then, of course, the Senators' first game is on October 5th. Mm-hmm. So initially there was a story that came out a week or so ago that they said, hey, Carlson might be there for opening night, but I'm not getting that from this
No,
story.
no, I'm not getting that at all. As a matter of fact, Wayne, we may wait a month to see him play. When you say there's no timetable for return, believe me, if Guy Boucher could tell reporters in the pressure-oriented Ottawa Senators news media corps, he would say, well, the timetable for his return looks like 2 to 3 weeks. But when you say there's no timetable for his return, that means that it is true what he's saying in this article, but it's also true that they're not sure yet, where his prognosis is, and it might be a month. So it could be longer than that, but I don't see him opening up anytime around the 5th. He may be a couple weeks into the season before they. I think here's what I think too. I think Ottawa is going to be hard pressed to play as well as they did last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but without Erik Karlsson, they are toast. And I think that the pressure will mount for him to go back out on the ice, depending on how they start their season. If they lose their first 10 games, if they lose 4 or 5 of them, they're gonna want Karlsson back out quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to say something pretty much similar to that. Is that, look, I think his timetable for return, a lot will depend on how well Ottawa gets off to their start in their regular season.
Right.
If they come out and go 8-2 in their first 10 games, well, yeah, they're going to take their sweet time getting him back out there,
right?
Because they're doing okay without him. But if they go 2-8,
yeah,
and Carolina has proven each of the last how many years that having a bad October and then you're having to swim against the current the rest of the season. It's not the way you want to play.
Right.
Because if you fall too far behind, you certainly can't make a playoff position in October, but you certainly can lose it.
Lose it. That is so true, Wayne. What a great point.
So, if Ottawa comes out to that 2-8 start and they struggle, you're probably going to see Karlsson rush back to the ice. Now, not rush to the point where you could risk further injury, but if he's 90% there and they're 2-8, you're going to see him back out there. Yep. If they're 8-2, you're not going to see him back out there till he's 100%.
Right.
So that's just my take on that.
Yeah.
All right, Boston Bruins defenseman Torrey Krug will miss the start of the regular season with a non-displaced fracture of his jaw. Krug was hit in the face with the puck in the defensive zone during the second period of the Bruins' 4-2 win against the Detroit Red Wings on Tuesday. That's last Tuesday, not this past Tuesday. The Bruins said last Thursday he will be reevaluated in 3 weeks. Krug led Boston defensemen in scoring last season with 51 points, and he led the Bruins with 25 power play points last season, despite missing. Actually, I don't think he missed any time in the regular season, 1 or 2 games maybe, but he missed a good chunk of the playoffs. Anyway, I know the NHL doesn't want their players wearing full visors. This brings up the visor debate again.
Right.
But an injury like this, to me, is completely preventable. If he'd have had a cage or a full visor, full face protection, this injury wouldn't have happened. The Bruins would have him to start. So I know the players don't ever want to get to the point where they have to wear full visors. I know the players are against it. They just are. It's the culture of the game. But as an owner, you're paying all this money invested into these players, and you want to win, and you need all your guys there to be able to win. And you lose a guy to an injury like this, and they're saying it could be 3 weeks before he's back.
Yeah.
And even when he comes back, he's going to come back with a shield of some kind. Yeah, he's going to come back with a shield of some kind. They'll bring him back as soon as he's able to play, and be effective without but they're still going to protect his face until he's back to 100%. I see it every week during the beer leagues when I'm reffing. I'm like, twice this past Sunday, one guy got hit in the mouth with a puck, bleeding all over the place. Another guy got hit right next to the cheek, cut his cheek wide open with a puck on the same day. Neither one wearing face protection. And I say to some of the other guys, now this is just, pickup hockey. This is beer league hockey. Nobody's a professional here. Yeah. Everybody's got to go to work the next day. Yet you got guys out there not wearing face protection, getting injured. I'm like, what is the point? Why? Why?
Yep. I mean, I've seen that injury many, many times watching hockey over the years, Wayne.
Yeah.
But I mean, that one last year with when Logan Couture took the puck right in his, hit him right in the teeth.
Yep.
Perfectly smashed his teeth right out. I mean, that was so unnecessary and a preventable injury. Had he been wearing a cage, he would have been fine. Instead, they had to rearrange his dental picture. I mean, that was terrible. Terrible injury.
Yep. The NHL claims are all about, concussion protection. Yeah, you're not going to get a concussion from a stick to the mouth or a puck to the mouth. I get that. Or if you do, it's extremely mild. But you look at the other sports that are considered rough sports, football, they wear full face protection.
Right.
You're starting to see it a lot in baseball now, where guys are wearing a thing to protect their face. Yep. Now, most of the time that's for injury, but definitely at the lower levels, you're seeing full face protection for baseball and softball at the youth levels. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, with the money as big as it is today, has the time come to have these players wear full face protection just so that the owners can protect their investment?
I think it has come, but it'll be something. I think that the
it's not. Yeah, the players have to agree with it, and the players are not going to agree to it. I mean, you've got players that would rather play without any face protection, but now they at least have to wear a visor to protect their eyes. Yeah. So, anyway, that's just just a rant. My viewpoints, obviously, the hockey purists, I'm sure, are yelling at their whatever their device they're listening to this, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can't, the whole. I get the whole tough guy routine, I get it, but it's a money situation to me. If I were an owner and I'm spending $6 million a year on a guy, and to lose him for a quarter of the season because he got hit in the mouth with a puck, I'm gonna want my guy to wear some sort of face protection so that he can play 82 games and not 60 games, right?
Right.
So, anyway, that's my stance. All right, let's move on to some of the other interesting stories we've had going around the league this week. First and foremost, the NHL announced 3 rule changes for the 2017-18 season. There is a video on NHL.com, and I've included a link to the video in the show notes that explains those 3 rule changes, as well as directions related to existing rules and equipment reminders. So first and foremost, the 3 rule changes. First one was no timeout after an icing. So you had a lot of teams that would use that as a tactic, where you get in trouble, you have to ice the puck in a close game. Yep. A lot of coaches will call a timeout after icing the puck in order to rest those guys because you're not allowed to change them.
Yep.
So they burn their timeout to try to give their players a rest after an icing. Well, now they're no longer going to be allowed to do that. Now the other team can call a timeout if they wish. They'd be stupid to, because you're getting to put a fresh line out there against a group of guys that are tired. So you'd be crazy to call a timeout as the offensive team. But anyway, that's the first rule. Number 2, face-off locations for high sticking the puck. We're talking about reaching up and hitting the puck, batting the puck with a stick above the shoulders. During power play and shorthanded situations used to be different than when you do it on 5-on-5. Now they've changed that rule to just for consistency's sake. Now, no matter what, a team that high sticks the puck during a power play shorthanded situation, where the face-off ultimately takes place will be no different than it is on 5-on-5. Now, when you were on a power play before, they'd bring it all the way down. Now, I think it just goes out just outside the zone. If you're the offensive team, if you're the defensive team, it just goes, back into your corner. So anyway, it's just a minor little adjustment to just for consistency on the location of a face-off when the puck is batted with a high stick. The third rule change goes under the coach's challenge. Now, if a coach challenges a goal due to what he deems to be an offside play, before, if you were wrong on a coach's challenge, you lost your timeout. Now, depending on what you're challenging, right now, if you're challenging, or the new rule is, if you're challenging due to goalie interference, it's still the same as it was. You lose your timeout if you're wrong. If it's an offside play and you're wrong, you get a delay game penalty.
So you immediately go into a power play.
You go shorthanded.
Right,
Let's say
shorthanded, correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's say, the Rangers are playing the Bruins. Rangers go in, score a goal. Bruins coach says, nope, that play was offside. Under the new rule, if he's wrong, then the Bruins will go shorthanded. Goal counts, of course. Bruins go shorthanded immediately, and then, they go into a shorthand situation.
I think, you know what I think, Wayne? That's the coaches will not take that risk now unless they got to
know. Yeah.
Yep.
They've got to know, because what was happening is they would use it, particularly late in games. They'd use it almost like as a free timeout. They would call, even if it was close, they'd call for that look, that second look. And then if they're wrong, well, during the time that they're looking, they're bringing the players in. They're basically going through their timeout procedure. If they're right, then the goal is disallowed, and they essentially got themselves a free timeout.
Right.
So, and a lot of coaches were doing that as a tactic. So this time, where there's actually a penalty involved, then you're going to see coaches think twice about using it. And of course, like I said before, calling for a review due to goalie interference, that stays the same as it was last year. They would just simply lose their timeout. It won't be a delay game penalty involved. And of course, with the offside one, if they're right, of course the goal is disallowed. If they're wrong, they get the penalty, but they also do not lose their timeout.
Right.
So, all right. Follow that?
Yeah, I follow that.
All right. So, as far as those are the three rule changes. Now, they also, and we've begun to see it in the preseason, they've also put a couple of points of emphasis on a couple of other rules that are currently existing where they're actually not changing the rule. They're just going to enforce it tighter. Number one is slashing. We have seen an epidemic of slashing penalties throughout the preseason so far. Players are beginning to adjust now. You're not seeing it as much in preseason games. You're still seeing quite a few slashing calls, but players are beginning to adjust. So you're not seeing it called. I mean, there was one game I was watching. There were 9 penalties in the first 6 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And most of them were slashing calls. And basically what they're trying to do, the reason they're doing the slashing is more for player safety. They're calling these slashing penalties that are up either on the hands and arms or near the hands and arms of the player. You're allowed to whack a player's stick down near the blade, down at the lower part of the stick. It's part of the game. You're trying to knock the puck off the player's stick. But if you're whacking a guy in his hands, that's where they're trying to call that, even if it's just a little chop. Because a lot of players got broken fingers,
Oh,
wrists.
when we had wooden sticks, you could break a man's hand if you slashed him there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're just trying to cut back on those types of fouls, and you're going to see, even in the beginning of the season, we're going to see an increase in slashing penalties. But eventually, the players will adjust and stop doing it, and I think the game will be better for it because you won't see players getting whacked and losing the puck as a result.
Yeah.
And the other change that they are going to be emphasizing is under face-off procedures. And we've seen a few penalties from that in the preseason where teams are getting penalized delay of games due to not lining up correctly in a face-off. Now, the way the rule is if the player doesn't line up correctly, the referee or linesman tosses the center, brings in a new center. If it happens with this new center before he has a chance to drop the puck, that's where the delay of game comes in. So if it happens twice in the same drop. And they're just going to be more strict with making players stay within the area. Their skates have to be not touching those lines that surround the dots. I'm talking about the four corner dots, where the lines exist there. They're supposed to line up with their skates outside those lines and with their sticks on the edge of the white or the dot, so that the referee has space to put the puck down without getting their hand chopped off, and the players aren't butting heads. So they're just being more strict on the face-off rules now. Again, you'll see players adjust. You won't see that as much as the season goes on. And the third thing they sent out in this video was talking about reminders to certain equipment issues that they've been seeing. Number one is the fact that they have outlawed tucking in your jersey inside your pants. They did have that. They came up with that rule a couple of years ago, but you were seeing players starting to do it, and they weren't enforcing it. Now they're going to be enforcing it. And then the other one with the equipment is visors that aren't properly worn. And they showed examples of several players where they had their helmet on and the visor was pushed up so far that it really wasn't protecting their face. Mm-hmm. The visor was covering the front of their helmet. The visor was pushed up so far. And they're going to be booting players off the ice that do that. The visor is supposed to be down in front, below the helmet, protecting the eyes of the player, and that's one of the things they're going to be looking at. And the whole jersey tuck thing, I'm still not entirely certain why that's such a big issue. Yeah. Of course, you gotta have the referees, the announcers, and that such be able to see the players' numbers. But other than that, I don't know why they're so adamant that the players have to have their jersey outside their pants. I know Wayne Gretzky would have a problem with that rule.
Yeah.
Because that was a big superstition of his, is to have his jersey tucked in. The right side of his jersey was always anytime you ever see a picture of Wayne Gretzky playing hockey, you always see the right side of his jersey tucked in. That was his thing. Yeah. So much so that I believe he had Velcro to keep it in there, or he used some sort of way to fasten it to the inside of his pants so it stayed in there.
He used some Stickum from Fred Bolitnikoff.
or something, yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the players that first came to mind, modern day players with the jersey situation, is Alex Ovechkin. He always tucks in the back of his jersey, so the back of his pants are sticking out past over his jersey. Now he can't do that, so it will be interesting to see if they continue to enforce that. So that was the big, and there's like a 10-minute video. Like I said, I've got the link in the show notes that explains everything that we just talked about. All the rule changes and emphasis and equipment reminders are all in that video. So if you need that, just go to the show notes and you'll be able to click on that there. All right, next story, NHL. The headline is NHL puts historical stats at your fingertips. A 6-year project that just completed this within the last month or two gives fans online access to data on every game and every player since 1917. And there's an article in the show notes, or there's a link in the show notes to the article that has full links to where you can find all these stats. but I was perusing through them myself, and it's quite interesting how much more detail you can get from historical stats like past seasons. I was actually able to go back and find the game, the game report for the very first NHL game that I ever attended as a kid.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that's something.
That's
pretty neat.
I actually shared it on my personal Facebook page today. It was back in January of 1984. It was a game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Boston Bruins at the Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden, of course. And Rick Middleton scored 2 goals in that game. I'm trying to think who else was in there. Dale Hawerchuk was playing at the time. Ray Bourque was playing, wearing his old number 7, not the 77 that everybody knows today. Yeah, that was so it's quite interesting to go back and see that game report of that very first game. And I also looked up a second one, was the one and only game where I actually got to see Wayne Gretzky play live. That was a game between the Oilers and the Hartford Whalers, and that one was also in January of 1986.
Yeah.
And that was Edmonton versus Hartford at the Hartford Civic Center. And Edmonton won that game 4-1, and Gretzky had 3 points in that game. 2 goals, 1 assist. He had a regular goal and then an empty netter at the end of the game, and then of course 1 more assist. And that was in the heyday of the Edmonton Oilers. You know, Gretzky, Curry, Messier, Coffey, all those guys. Grant Fuhrer was on the team, but Andy Moog played net that night. Mike Liut was in net for Hartford that night.
I remember Mike Liut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to go back and look at any
That's
specific
really cool.
games, yeah, they have that on the NHL.com now. So, all right, former NHL center Vincent Lecavalier will have his number 4 retired by the Tampa Bay Lightning before the game against the Kings at Amalie Arena on February 10th. Lecavalier, selected by Tampa Bay with the number 1 pick in the '98 draft, had 949 points in 1,212 games with the Lightning, Flyers, and Kings. The 4-time All-Star won the Stanley Cup in 2004 and the Maurice Richard Trophy as the league's top goal scorer with 52 in 2006-2007, when he set a Lightning record with 108 points that year. Lecavalier's 383 goals are also the Tampa Bay franchise record. Lecavalier retired on June 21st, 2016. He's the second player to have his jersey retired by the Lightning, joining forward Martin St. Louis, who had number 26. Now, Lecavalier is only 37.
Right.
So he retired relatively early.
Yeah, he did. You know, if ever there was a player who loved John Tortorella, it's Vinny Lecavalier, man. He thinks John Tortorella hung the moon. He loved playing for him. And I don't know that his career ever really matched how he played when he was in Tampa Bay, because he played for John Tortorella. It was like a heart connection for him, and he seemed to be full of emotion and passion for the game. I want to score for my coach. You know, I don't think he carried that over when he became a Flyer or later on in his career as when he played for Tampa Bay. I don't know. That's just my take on it. But he was a great player. He was a really great player. I really enjoyed watching Vinny Lecavalier.
Yeah, and I would expect as one of the modern day players that he will probably end up in the Hall of Fame.
I think so too. Yeah, I believe he will. Yep. Not so much maybe for his numbers, but for the team that he played on and just that era when Tampa Bay was really, really a good team.
Well, he was on their 1 cup winning team as well, so there's that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. It may be the preseason, but the atmosphere certainly had the intensity of a Stanley Cup playoff game when the St. Louis Blues defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-1 in the 3rd annual Kraft Hockeyville USA game at UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex on Sunday. The Penguins, playing in front of 1,500 fans in their practice rink, were the home team after Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania, topped the more than 1,300 entries to win the Kraft Hockeyville title. As a result, the Rostraver Ice Garden received $150,000 in renovations, and the community had numerous festivities leading up to the game, including a visit from the Stanley Cup. Okay, so my thoughts on this. The Rostraver Ice Garden is actually the rink that wins the renovations.
Yeah.
But the game was played at UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex, which is a nearby facility, and that's actually where the Penguins practice.
Yeah.
So initially I was thinking when I saw this, I'm like, man, that whole thing is rigged. Why would they give the winner to one of the NHL's practice facilities? But, when I look at it closer, it actually wasn't the practice facility that wins the upgrades. It's another nearby rink that wins it.
Right.
So I hope that somebody outside of Pennsylvania wins it next year, because they've had 2 of these now. They've been doing it. They've been doing it for years in Canada, the Kraft Hockeyville. And they bounce it around west to east. It's been all over Canada. But they've had 2 now in the U.S., and both of them were in
Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's because the league continues to want to put the Pittsburgh Penguins front and center in front of all the fans. Like, I'm getting sick and tired of seeing the Penguins all the time. I really am.
I have to second that, Wayne. I totally agree with you.
And I'm
tired of seeing Pittsburgh in these damn Kraft Hockeyville, and they all, I'm getting sick of that.
It's the Hockeyville, the outdoor games,
Yeah.
all the big events, all the big spotlight games that they seem to have. Half the damn Wednesday night rivalries involve the Penguins.
Yeah.
I get it. They're a good team. They're the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, but God, there's 31 teams in the league.
Yeah.
Let's spread the love around a little bit.
Yeah. Very good, Wayne.
So anyway, but congratulations to the people in that community who get their much-needed renovations for their rink. So
absolutely,
I would love to see it come a little bit closer to us, but I don't know if there's enough grassroots, because it takes a lot of grassroots effort to propel an arena like that to the top of because it's all basically voting, fan voting. You need a big hockey community involved with a particular rink in order to make it happen.
Yep.
So I've got a feeling the Kraft Hockeyville is going to be a northern rink thing for quite some time to come, because these southern rinks, the community is too small to be able to drum up that kind of sport. So anyway, it would be nice though if Kraft would take that into account and say, let's send it down south once in a while. But anyway, they probably won't. All right, Washington Capitals forward Tom Wilson has been suspended for 2 preseason games for interference against the St. Louis Blues forward Robert Thomas during the NHL preseason game number 46 on Washington on Friday, September 22nd. The NHL's Department of Player Safety announced a couple of days ago. The incident occurred at 5:47 in the third period. I looked at the video of this, and he basically just lined him up, and the puck left his stick. Like, he was carrying up the ice, and it kind of lost control of it, and it kind of scooted away from him. But the puck was gone for a good second or more before he got hit by Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson lined him up and clocked him. And obviously, the NHL is trying to get those hits out of the game. It's a primary reason why these concussions happen. And speaking of concussions, I saw a story. TSN did a story on Paul Kariya. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. I began seeing a lot of activity on the internet around Paul Kariya last night, and I kind of looked into it this morning, and it turns out that TSN did a story on him, and they talked about a big part of that story is where they talked about the concussion issue in hockey, and